All right, welcome, my friends, to another episode of Extreme Health Radio. Looks like I'm getting a little double feedback here, so I'll turn this one down just a little bit. Yeah, hopefully you guys are doing great. This is episode 654 of Extreme Health Radio. Thanks for joining us, my friends. And we're going to have Morley Robbins on the show. I will introduce him in just a second. And as you guys probably know, there are so many talking heads with this coronavirus and the CV-19 and oh my God, everything you look at is like people talking about it from a multitude of different angles. But I think, like I mentioned on this, on the YouTube thumbnail for this show, we're going to talk about an angle to it that you have never probably heard before, unless you're familiar with the work of Morley Robbins, who, in my opinion, we've done 654 shows going back to 2012. I've listened to probably 10 times as many shows as I have done, and I don't think anyone puts everything together as much as Morley does. I mean, he's an absolute genius, and I'm just super, super privileged to have him on the show today. So I'll introduce him in just a second. We do shows once a week, every Friday morning, live on YouTube, live on Facebook. I think we're live on Twitter. I don't remember. We're live in a lot of different places on YouTube and Facebook. 10:45 a.m. Pacific. So if you are new to the show, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or any of those other platforms, you get shows, our best of episodes 6 days a week. And then on Monday morning, you get the live show that we did on Friday. So make sure to do that. You don't miss any of our archive shows and all that good stuff. If you want the show notes for today's show, everything is available at extremehealthradio.com/654. The sponsors, any of the links, I'll try to take my best show notes for today's show on extremehealthradio.com/654. And let me bring up my little cheat sheet here. Mr. Morley Robbins, he doesn't really need an introduction, but if you're unfamiliar with him and his work, you shouldn't be if you care about your health. He's the man, the myth, the legend behind the Root Cause Protocol, which he started in 2012, as well as the Magnesium Advocacy Group. He's worked with over 4,500 patients personally, probably more than that by now. Hair tissue mineral analysis expert, and really, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on minerals. And there's a lot of people who we have on the show that have busy practices and they do all these things. But Morley spends a couple hours every day poring over research. And these are the types of people that we like to have on our show. Guys that do the research and guys that are looking at the studies and working with people. So really, really excited to have him on the show today to talk about this coronavirus that we seem to can't get enough of. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone wants to know more. Morley, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Very, very happy to be here, and very humbled by your kind words. What I always tell people is, I'm not sure I'm a genius, but I am genuine. And I think to me, the biggest sacrifice I've made is not being able to do and continue my research at Starbucks. That's been a devastating blow to my routine. You have no idea. I think differently when I'm in that frenetic, uber caffeinated environment.
Yeah.
And I've done my best to maintain a vigil, and I'm still researching, but there's nothing like three and a half hours in Starbucks. I'll tell you, it's like a full day's read. I can assure you of that.
I know. For those that don't know, I mean, I get emails from you on a regular basis with different studies you're looking at. So you literally go to Starbucks in the morning and just pour over research. Is that where you do all the reading?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so cool.
I can't remember. I should have the day burnished in my memory, but I can't remember the exact day. But it was a Wednesday. I know that, and they kicked me out. I'm like, are you serious?
Really? Wow,
like,
really?
Yeah, the directive just came from corporate office. I was like, are you serious? Are you kidding?
My gosh. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Man,
So
oh,
now I
man.
go to a drive-through, and it's actually been the fun part is that Dr. Liz and I really have enjoyed the time in the morning together that we ordinarily would not have had. So it's been a lot of fun to have those little drives to the Starbucks
Yeah.
coffee shop. And
No, I hear you. I mean, what I said that, I listen to a lot of different experts on minerals and a lot of different shows and things like that. And by the way, listeners, what I would suggest you do if you're subscribed to any shows on iTunes, if you're new to Morley's work, go into iTunes and search Morley Robbins and listen to all the shows he's been on. This is what I've been doing for the past, since we had him on first. And And there's a lot of
And you're
people.
and you're still able to talk. I'm impressed.
I know, right? It's just your work is so simple yet so profound because you really only focus on a couple minerals, right? Copper, magnesium,
That's right.
yeah,
Well,
iron.
and it's also it isn't just the minerals, and they're very important. It's maybe I'm the only one on the planet that knows that oxygen is a poison, and
Hmm.
and so I spell poison Poison, and it's like once you understand that, it begins to amplify the importance of magnesium and bioavailable copper and
Hmm.
why we need less iron in our body.
So, if you guys are new to this show, go back and listen to Morley's previous episodes because we laid a really great foundation for copper, iron, magnesium, true vitamin A, which is retinol, and how that plays a role in the immune system, or the role in the immune system, as you mentioned before we started. So, we're not going to lay all that foundation now because we've already done that, and Morley's done that in a great way on his website, rcp123.org. So this whole thing with the coronavirus, Morley, I don't even know where to start with this. Before we started, you mentioned Dr. Shiva. Feel free to just vent and go off on your own if you would like.
Well, let me create a little historical context. Um, I came across a very important study by Dr. McHargue, Mchargue. This is from 1925, and he was fascinated with copper, and he was studying copper in plants and animals and humans. And it's a 10-page study, you know, just chock full of information. But what was unmistakable was his consistent references to the fact that whenever there is tissue that has vitality, copper is present. And this is especially true in young, developing tissue. So right away, we have an important clue that copper is really important for the fetal development, for the pediatric development,
Mm-hmm.
for the youth and vitality of organisms. And it would also imply that maybe it's not so powerful or prevalent as we get older. Well, that's an interesting thought. And so, independent of our dietary habits, I've got a few years on you. So I'm guessing that my copper level isn't as robust as yours is. And that's in part why I have more wrinkles, I have less hair. I don't have the aches and pains that a lot of people my age. I'm a tender 67, but I have a lot of energy, I can tell you that. And I've got a lot of horsepower, and I'm really grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people need to understand that at the end of the day, if you want vitality, you want bioavailable copper. And what's the number one reason why people go to see their doctor? Fatigue. It's a known fact. So let me come at this whole coronavirus or COVID-19 with a slightly different perspective and um, share a couple important developments that we've endured as a society. One is that in 1955, President Eisenhower had a heart attack, first of 8 heart attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but he was put on a low cholesterol, actually a low fat diet. And then the nation endured 65 years of tyranny because we were told by the experts that cholesterol causes heart disease. Well, we believed that for a long time, actually until 2018, when Raznikov and Diamond and a whole bunch of other people published a very important study that said, stop it. That's not what causes heart disease. It's not cholesterol. And in fact, the truth has come to light that it was the iron filings that they were adding to our wheat flour
Mm-hmm.
ever since 1941. And so that's an important thing for people to know that what the system wants you doing is look here, don't look over here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look over here. Keep your focus here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important event in our historical development as a nation and our awareness about health issues. Then in the 1990s, early 1990s, you may recall that there was a big blow up about hormone laced milk, RBST milk. And there was just this vehement fervor to not allow that to happen. And there were some pretty hostile meetings and a lot of objections and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're back to look here, RBST milk. Don't look over here about GMO.
Right.
And what was happening is, as people were out protesting RBST milk, the food industry was backing their semis into the supermarkets full of GMO food.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact. In Europe, they shut down GMO in 4 weeks. And here we are, 30 years later? And if you took a poll on the street, I'll give you $1,000 for every person you could find who actually knew what GMO meant.
Mm-hmm.
So we, as a society, are woefully unaware of what's really going on. And then along comes COVID-19, and it's been an absolute classic case study of look here, not there,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of hysteria about it. I think much of it has been hysteria whipped up by the system and the media that they control, and we don't need to get into the politics of that or what that's all about, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we really know.
Yeah.
But but what we can do is begin to question the sanity and the training of the medical personnel who don't seem to know their elbow from their ear. And what's come to light is that you can't catch a virus. I didn't know that. I thought that was fascinating. I thought I was pretty smart guy. But a virus is actually a reaction to a toxin. It is not the toxin. It's fascinating when you get into it. And I give B.A. Shiva credit for schooling me up, along with several other people. There's a guy, Tom Barnett, down in Australia, and a few others that have really done a masterful job of saying, okay, stop it. This virus thing has got to stop.
So this idea, Morley, that you can catch a virus through the air is not even true, is it?
No. It's an internal reaction. It's an intracellular reaction to a toxin,
Mm-hmm.
which then led us to Tom Cowan and a number of other people who are blaming the EMF radiation.
Uh-huh.
And there's some very interesting dot connecting between the Spanish flu and all the major global flus and illnesses that have taken place since the Spanish flu, tied to changes in EMF radiation,
Mm-hmm.
radio waves to radar to, like 100,000 satellites in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know there were that many in the sky. It's like there must be
Yeah.
as many satellites as there are stars now.
Right.
And so, and then they walk us through 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, booga booga. Then you do research on 5G. It's really bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a notable uptick from 4G. It's tenfold more powerful. It's 60 gigahertz. But what's notable, particularly notable, is its impact on the oxygen molecule.
Okay.
Totally changes the electron spin. And again, what you got to do is kind of back away from your understanding about, we can't live without oxygen. We know that. Well, but it's also we can't age without it either. And so the oxygen molecule is very important to our mitochondria and to a whole bunch of other pathways. And we don't really know what happens to that oxygen when it comes into our body. I'm still asking scientists all over the world, so tell me how this oxygen molecule actually gets to complex 4 of the mitochondria. And the response I'm getting back is crickets.
Really?
Crickets. Nobody knows, supposedly, that, wow, gee, oxygen just kind of shows up at complex 4. Now, you and I both know that's not what's going on. But in any event, there's a lot of confusion about it. But the oxygen molecule, if it gets affected by 5G, and and the impulse of 5G is carried through oxygen. That's kind of intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Means you got to
Yeah.
get rid of trees, got to get rid of trees and buildings, right?
Right.
And so it's a very kind of bizarre technology. And there's compelling evidence. You look at the videos from China and other parts of the world where they've rolled out 5G. There's no question it's having an effect.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't think that's the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a notable factor.
Mm-hmm.
And then what, as I alluded to in my email to you earlier today, what seems to be um, what the real clinical analysts are converging on, something called mycoplasma
Mm-hmm.
and or mycotoxins, and it's fascinating. And what is a mycoplasma? Well, it's the smallest pathogen that's available in the world, really tiny,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an engine for oxidative stress. Wow, that's interesting. And they can't seem to agree on whether it's a um, bacteria or a parasite. That's kind of unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it morphs back and forth between the two. That's if you get into the world of virology and immunology, you'll find out that Béchamp was right about pleomorphism.
Mm-hmm.
That
They can
the
do that.
pathogens they morph back and forth depending upon the pH of the tissue,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure there are other variables. But in any event, I think what is important for people to understand is that these mycoplasma are really, really tiny. And guess what? You can wear face masks, you can wear gloves, you can put cotton swabs in your ears, and it's not going to stop the mycoplasma from being transmitted.
Interesting.
Hmm. Now
Mm.
we've got it. Now we have something to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I think what's important is even with all of that information, again, that's we're back to look here. Nobody's looking over here about why don't we talk about the human immune system for a little bit?
Yeah. No,
And
that's
and
Morley.
the
I think, sorry to cut you off, but I think
yeah,
this is so
no,
important because like Dr. Tom Cowan that you mentioned, he's a great guy. He's been on our show and done some great work. And
absolutely.
there is some really interesting things when you correlate the SARS virus and all the different viruses, Ebola and H1N1 and all
Absolutely.
these things with the 1, 2G, 3G. And that's what you're alluding to. But the problem with that is that I mean, yes, there are some things I could do, about 5G and all this. I can sign petitions and
Right.
but I
Absolutely.
can't do much about what Verizon or AT&T is going to do with their legal and their marketing policies. But I can do the stuff that we're going to talk about today. I can focus on my immune system, and I know that's where you want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I can tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what does mycoplasma love? It loves iron. It just it really loves iron. And I think what we have is this convergence of is the EMF radiation for real? I think so,
Hmm.
especially in an iron toxic body.
Yeah.
Is the prevalence of mycoplasma higher? Absolutely, especially in an older body and a body that has comorbidities like cancer or diabetes or hypertension or asthma or something like that. And so the what the world needs to come up to speed with really quick is this tsunami of chronic disease isn't coming from Mars. It's coming from inside bodies that have way too little bioavailable copper, way too much iron, and that's causing unchecked oxidative stress in their body. And it expresses in different ways. Different parts of the body get affected. And maybe the EMF is a triggering event to agitate the mycoplasma. I don't, at some level, we're never really going to figure this thing out. But
Yeah.
that's not what our focus is. What we want to do is say, stop trying to look over here. Start spending more time over here where they don't want you looking, which is how how do we build immunocompetence? That's a big word.
Hmm.
Immunocompetence. That means that my immune system has intelligence, has resilience, and has the capacity to respond to the assault. And what I was able to find this morning, because I've been looking for a couple of days now, but I found a really important article by a Dr. Kahan. I know your followers love to like hold up the research.
Oh yeah, look at
Uh,
that. Oxidative damage induced by mycoplasmas. Plasmas.
and what's
Great.
important for people, this is from 1995. And what's important for people to understand is that these little critters love to make what's called superoxide. So when you add an extra electron to oxygen, it's called superoxide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why they don't call it hyperoxide. But it becomes very reactive. And the body is supposed to have a very important antioxidant enzyme called superoxide dismutase. So dismutase is a stupid way of saying neutralize.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the very first antioxidant enzyme that was identified in 1969 at Duke University by Joe McCord and his faculty advisor, Erwin Fredovich.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal because that discovery is what put Denham Harmon's free radical theory of aging on the map.
Mm-hmm.
He had written it a number of years before. His whole thesis, he was an engineer who was studying oxidative stress in the industrial setting, and he decided to go to a little school in California called Stanford to become a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1956, he writes a very groundbreaking study about, well, gee, it's oxygen that's causing all the problems. That's why we get older, and that's why we age. It was such a heretical breakthrough that the mainstream medicine just couldn't handle it until McCord discovered superoxide dismutase. And what we find out is that that's a copper-dependent enzyme. Yeah, they love to tell you that zinc is there too. Well, the bookcases behind me, they're like zinc. They're structural. They're there, but they're not catalytic.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hand me the book, do they? They hold it, but they're not doing anything actively involved in the dismutation or the neutralizing of the superoxide. Well, people who are low in bioavailable copper, guess where it shows up in testing? Superoxide dismutase. They'll be low in superoxide dismutase. In fact, that's why people get Lyme disease. The reaction to the bite, if there is one, should be immediately neutralized by superoxide dismutase. But if you're iron toxic, which means you don't have enough bioavailable copper to spit at, well, then your immune system is going to be compromised and you're not going to be able to stop the assault at the very beginning. And that's the part that is completely lost on conventional medicine right now, is they're not talking about what we collectively can do to strengthen our immune system, to make it more responsive, more resilient. And I think that is, to me, it's now the third most obvious assault to our intellect on the heels of cholesterol causes heart disease, the whole insanity of GMO food, and now we have this belief that it's going to be COVID-19. Well, then it's going to be son of COVID-19, and then it's going to be something even bigger, and you're not going to be able to respond to it.
Yeah.
And people, I have a video that I did a couple weeks ago, talking about 3 key words. Let your faith be bigger than your fear.
Uh-huh.
But I spell fear differently. It's FE-AR, so people can see the iron in that word, because
Uh-huh.
fear does attract iron.
Mm-hmm.
It's an established clinical fact. And then cure is spelled CU-RE, so
Ah.
people can see the copper in the cure. And in fact, what's entirely missing from the mainstream hyperbolic reporting about COVID-19 is that there is something that we can do. It's called the root cause protocol. It's called building up your minerals, especially your bioavailable copper, building up your vitamin complexes, especially whole food vitamin C, which has copper,
Mm-hmm.
building up your retinol, which is, as you noted, it's the real vitamin A. And
Mm-hmm.
what does vitamin A do? It loads copper into the enzyme so it can strengthen the immune system. And then we have nutrient dense foods, which are very important for just building our overall responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was watching this morning was a video that one of my followers sent me. I've got, you can imagine the number of videos I've been sent
I
over
know,
the last
right?
few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful. They've all been very helpful. They've all
Yeah.
provided a little piece of the puzzle. But
Uh-huh.
this one was a wonderful video by V.A. Shiva, and I'm sure people are familiar with his name now, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's absolutely fascinating that this guy developed email. It's just priceless. I
Isn't
love
that
that
great?
that there's that there is one person who actually pulled it off, and he's got the documentation to prove it. So he's a
Yeah.
really talented guy, well educated. He was 14 years old when he pulled it off.
Yeah.
Well educated, obviously. Went to a little school in Boston called MIT.
MIT,
Um,
yeah.
MIT, and I'm sure he wears the brass rat. That's what they call it. The school ring has it's actually a beaver, but they call it the brass rat.
Oh,
I love
funny.
it. And what is brass made out of, Justin? It's made out
It's
of copper.
copper, right? Yeah.
And apparently, they don't know that at MIT, because what this video that I was listening to today it was excellent, and it was I think it was January 1st. I think it was a New Year's Day video
Oh,
about the
interesting.
immune system, and V.A. Shiva did a masterful job. I'll send you the link so you can add it to the show notes.
Great.
But what I want people to understand is that he really does a great job explaining the different components of the immune system. And people have heard of the innate, and they've heard of the adaptive. Well, he put it all together into a beautiful model where you've got the innate and the acquired, or the adaptive, but then he put interferon in between them, which is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And then he put the whole neuro response and the microbiome, our gut,
Mm-hmm.
tied it all together. It was a really beautiful model, but there's only one thing he missed. He forgot to talk about bioavailable copper. And what people don't realize is that the power and the armaments of the innate immune system, the regulation of the interferon system, the power and the armaments of the adaptive immune system, the fact that if you get neuroinflammation, guess what mineral you're missing? It's called copper. And there's this incredible complexity in our microbiome. We know that. Well, within that microbiome, there's 1,000 different types of what are called multi-copper oxidases. Huh? What did you just say?
Uh,
Multi-copper oxidases. They're called MCOs. And what do? Well, they turn oxygen into water without giving off static. It's really important. It's actually what runs our mitochondria. And if the gut doesn't have access to that range of MCOs, it doesn't work right. And so all of this elegance and sophistication of our immune system, I really appreciate the fact that he talked about it on New Year's Day. That was really helpful. But I would really like it that if more people were aware of the fact of what really energizes and enhances the immune system. And it's called bioavailable copper.
so
And
Morley, do you
and what's
think? Sorry to cut you off,
Go ahead.
but do
No,
you
sorry, go
think?
ahead.
Do you think that he just doesn't know, or people don't know that? So my question is like, there are all these things that dampen your immune system and lower it, and then there's things that improve it. You know, being healthy and natural lifestyle and stuff. The question is, how much does copper play a role? Is it the only role, or is it like 90%, and he just doesn't know it, or what do you think?
No, I think it's a fair question. I think in his defense, it was not a part of his formal training. My younger son, he too went to Stanford and got his PhD in biochemistry. Very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously not my son, right?
Yeah.
And
No way.
and when he was in college, he ran a modest 402 mile. It's like
Oh, wow.
I have trouble driving that fast, but no, real. He sent me when he was at Stanford for Christmas several years ago. He said, "Dad, I want," because he knew of my interest. He said, "I want you to have my favorite biochemistry textbook." And I was like, "Oh, Tom, thank you." And it was the um, human biochemistry of human enzymes.
Wow.
I said, this book was this thick. It was one of these like telephone
Yeah.
size. It was huge. It was huge. It was like reading, one of the early Bibles. I was like, oh my God. And so I have an acid test process to see, does this author really understand what they're talking about? And I go
Uh-huh.
back and see what they say about magnesium, and then see what they say about copper.
Nothing? Was there anything?
There were three references to magnesium. And this is a 1,260-page textbook.
Wow.
And so in V.A. Shiva's defense, it's not part of the formal training of anyone in the world of science, that they're taught about enzymes, but they're not taught that they work just like the cars we drive. If we don't have the key, the enzyme doesn't work. And so I don't know how this has escaped people's awareness, but it has. And so we can't blame physicians either, or nurses, or whatever the technician might be, because it's not been a part of their formal training. The question that and I don't know why. Again, we don't need to go into the conspiracy of, oh, whose idea was that? It
Right.
doesn't matter. Fact of the matter is, here's the equivalent. Here's the equivalent. We're coming up on a very notable um, holy weekend for a lot of people around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised in a household that was Episcopalian, and so I was raised on the Bible, right? King James Version Bible. I remember
Mm.
getting it from my grandfather when I entered the church. It was a big deal, and it's what I think is important for the listeners to understand is that the doctors that they go to are also raised on a Bible, and it's called the Merck Manual, right? And so we know who the protagonist is in the King James Version Bible, but there is no protagonist in the Merck Manual. So think about it. So the equivalent would be that it would be like reading the Christian Bible and there's no mention of Jesus. It'd be like reading the Torah and there's no mention of Yahweh. It'd be like reading the Tibetan Bible. There's no mention of the Dalai Lama.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like reading the Quran and there's no mention of Muhammad. And so that doesn't make any sense, does it? But yet doctors are trained in a Bible and there's no mention of copper. Not one word.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And it
Yeah.
certainly would imply that there was some thought to it, but we don't need to worry about that. What we are focused on, and I'm very grateful for this, is you get switched on talking about this, and I think your listeners do as well, because I think they've known that something was missing. Well, what's the phrase? Missing information equals missing truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're chatting about here is a mechanism. I call it Kupro truth, but it's getting people to understand the truth of how their body really works.
Mm-hmm.
And it does run on minerals, and what it really runs on is energy. And if you don't have magnesium and copper, you don't have energy. And if you don't have energy, I can assure you the pathogens know it, because they key off of low frequency and they wake up and they perk up and they thrive on low energy. And what do? When you get into the literature, what they'll tell you about blah, 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 is the host pathogen interface about iron, right? Oh,
Yeah.
fighting over the iron. Guess what they're silent about? Oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out, as we learned, these buggers love oxygen and they love to tweak it so it can't be used for mitochondria. How about that? Because as
Wow.
soon as you take oxygen and turn it into superoxide, you can't activate it to make it into ATP. You can't make water from superoxide unless you have superoxide dismutase, which turns it into hydrogen peroxide. And then if you have catalase or you have glutathione peroxidase, you can turn that the hydrogen peroxide into water. And guess what's really fascinating about these mycoplasma? They mess up catalase. So you can't do that.
Oh.
So suddenly we've got a two for action here that apparently clinicians don't know about because they've not been taught about oxygen. They've not been taught about bioavailable copper. They've not been taught that, in fact, copper is the only element on planet Earth that can harness oxygen. What does it do with oxygen? Well, it's either going to activate it so it can become water to
Okay.
release energy, or it's going to deactivate the oxidants. And an oxidant is just an accident with oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
Superoxide, hydrogen peroxide, hydroxyl radical, peroxynitrate. Those are some of the most significant. And it's fascinating that copper is involved in neutralizing all of those if you have it in your system. And then if you can't metabolize the oxygen, oh yeah, copper knows how to store it in cholesterol. And so it takes 11 molecules of oxygen to make one molecule of cholesterol. And what's really fascinating about these mycoplasma and why we know that they are the problem in this particular crisis is that people have had notable loss of cholesterol in their bodies. And guess what mycoplasma live on? Cholesterol. How about so isn't it fascinating that these
Oh.
mycoplasma live on cholesterol and apparently don't get atherosclerosis, but humans were trained to believe that, oh, cholesterol that's been on the planet since oxygen, oh, don't get near the cholesterol. It's like, that's the insanity of the system, is hijacking our intellect and hijacking our innate intelligence to know how to deal with the pathogenic attacks that have been on this planet since the beginning of time.
So
And
fascinating.
there's no focus there. There's just
Yeah.
no focus at all.
Hope you guys are enjoying this show with Morley Robbins. I would highly recommend going to RCP 123.org. That's his main website. He's got a couple different websites, but go there, sign up, and get the root cause protocol. Join his magnesium advocacy group. I can say that on Facebook. 175,000 people. I'm on there. So many people are on there, and there's articles and things being shared all the time. Super, super important for your health. It's interesting because, like Morley, we're going to take a little break right now, but like Morley was just saying, in the same way that, the medical industry, and you're not getting any talk about copper, you're also not getting, in the natural side, you're getting people talking about how magnesium runs 300 different enzymes in the body when, according to Morley's work, it's over 3,700. 42% of our 9,000 enzymes run on magnesium. And there's not even a lot of people in the natural health world talking about that. So I hope you guys are enjoying this show. RCP123.org is where you're going to want to go. Sign up, join, and be a part of his root cause protocol. I think it'll really help you a lot. I wanted to share with you some ways that I enhance my immune system. And one of the things I like to do every day as part of my little workout routine, I like to lift weights and go surfing and hiking and all that kind of good stuff too. But I like to do rebounding. Jumping up and down on a little mini trampoline stimulates your lymphatic system, flushes your body, opens all of those millions of one-way passages in your lymph system to flush out toxins. And here's Dr. Judy Mikovits talking about that.
And let's think about the simplest thing. I used to do one of those rebounders for exercise back in the 80s and things like that. And it's a wonderful way to move your lymphatics because a lot of these toxins simply clog up the highways. Think about LA. That's why I take the train, because you can't get there from here. There's so much road construction, narrowing down to 3 lanes here and there. That blocks it all up. That's with the lymphatics. That's with the blood. That's why we see all this swelling and inflammation. And then all of these toxins are talking to the cells that say, I have to go repair. And overdoing repair causes cancers because you need to turn that off.
Yeah, so we can't say that rebounding, jumping up and down on a mini trampoline like this Bellicon that we recommend, can cure anything, because that would be illegal and that would be against the law. But it is a wonderful device, and I used to think it was more like Jane Fonda, 1970, with the leg warmers on and really cheesy kind of hokey exercise. But it's really a great thing to do outside in the sun and jumping up and down. I like to do it after my workouts, kind of flush a lot of that lactic acid. It just increases endorphins, great for your circulation, blood circulation. It's just a great, great exercise to do. So what I like to do is I like to do the rebounder. If I have the time, I like to do a little workout. I always do my workouts outside in the sun. And then I'll do a little rebounder session for about 20, 30 minutes, flush all that lactic acid. And then what I like to do is go into my relaxed far infrared sauna and sweat out all those toxins. And here's Dr. Randy Tent talking about sweating.
When people talk about sweating, most people, look at this as an isolated event. You're detoxing properly with, the infrared sauna. Making sure nutritionally on the inside, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 essential fats. Making sure that you're closing down those pathways is just as important as detoxing, because when people start detoxing their body, that's chelation. So when people want to come in and do all this chelation, I'm like, do you understand? Metals and minerals are cousins. I'll be pulling both out of you at the same time. So when you start chelating, these deficient people are just toxic. You're actually even pulling their minerals down at the same time, and they don't understand that. You got to push the machine like the doctors you were talking about. And learning to sweat is a fantastic way to detoxify. They claim you can get about 50% of the poisons out of you through your skin if you sweat successfully. And with you got a very intelligent client audience here. And the more fat you got, the more places you have to hold stuff. You want to try to get as much fat off you can because you don't store stuff. And I wanted to go to the bathroom and show my steel cylinder. I'm going to use the steel cylinder as much as I can because I don't want any more plastic than I have to. And people can talk about a safe plastic, and I understand there's safe plastics, but I don't know if that safe plastic was sitting out in the sun, because I can taste some of that plastic that sits in the sun, and it tastes funny. We gave plastic to our kids, plastic pacifiers to our kids, plastic bottles to our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, plastic everywhere.
And aluminum lined juice boxes that I've seen on the kids.
Dr. Tent. I love him. So one of the ways we like to do this is by jumping in our little relaxed far infrared sauna. It's a great tool because you don't have to knock down walls. It's not this big thing you have to set up. You don't have to preheat this thing. It heats up automatically, and you're sweating within minutes. You can break it down. It's portable. You can store it underneath the bed if you have company coming over. You can lend it to a friend. It's just this super, super low EMF, and it uses far infrared heat. Actually, it's light that penetrates and oscillates your fat cells to help get rid of these toxins that are stored inside of our fat tissues. And this is just a great thing. I've been doing it every day for not every day, probably about 5 days a week since 2012 when we first started our show. And it's just a great, great machine, this relaxed far infrared sauna. And we're have them available at biocharge.me if you're interested. I recommend bringing these tools into your house and building or making your home like a little sanctuary. Bring some of these healing things and practices that you can do to enhance your immune system. Bring them into your home and make it easy for yourself so you don't have to drive to a gym and go to a sauna, because that's super easy to sort of just skip out on. But with this, your head sticks out. You can watch a documentary. You can read a book. You can talk to people. It's really great. So I can't recommend this enough. Biocharge.me if you want to support the show and grab one of these relaxed far infrared saunas. We ship them all over the world, as well as the Bellicon Rebounder as well. And those are both available at biocharge.me. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a link down below for both of these products. And if you're listening on a podcast, the links for these should be at extremehealthradio.com/654, which is today's episode. So make sure to check out biocharge.me if you're interested in supporting the show and getting some really cool and unique healing tools into your protocol. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to take some questions on our Extreme Health Radio YouTube channel. If they come up, please type them in all caps. If you would do that, that'd be super helpful. That way I make sure and I don't miss them. Sometimes, if they're in all caps, I can see all the questions. So we'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to Extreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging @Extreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
Yeah, we're trying to make sure to grow our audience on Instagram. So if you like the shows, like what we're up to, we share a lot of cool stuff on there. A lot of memes, a lot of articles, a lot of updates on what we have going on our show. So make sure to follow us on there. That way you can get updates and you can follow all the work that we're doing. And we are with Mr. Morley Robbins right now. And let me bring him back up on the show. And Morley, I feel like, just like what you're talking about, with most people not talking about copper, in the same vein, natural health people, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. I mentioned this before. Magnesium, it's a good mineral. It works with 300 different things in the body, and it's one of many different minerals. But man, it's the mineral, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I think what and I really enjoyed the advertisements. I've never known what Dr. Judy Mikovits looked like. Now I have no idea. I appreciate that, but really enjoyed her message, but also enjoyed what Dr. Tent was saying. And I've said this to so many people. You don't understand what chelation does. It's a bulldozer. It doesn't know the difference between rose bushes and boulders. And so it's really important that people understand that this is a very significant event. And what I will point out is that when the liver is properly mineralized, especially with magnesium and copper, it knows exactly what to do to clean out the system. This idea that you and I, through our intellect, are going to tell the body what to do, when in fact it's the hypothalamus that's thinking a million times faster than we can talk.
Right.
So it's almost comical. but the thing is that, and I think I cut my teeth on magnesium. I think it's an amazing mineral. I affectionately refer to it as Maggie. But the thing is that there are a lot of people that use magnesium to treat symptoms, but they don't understand why they keep losing the magnesium. I call it the magnesium burn rate.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, "Oh, I'm under a lot of stress, so I need to replace my magnesium." Well, as soon as you're under stress, you're under oxidative stress. Why are you under oxidative stress? Because when you're under chronic stress, the liver produces a protein called metallothionein. Metallothionein binds up copper 1,000 times stronger than it binds up zinc. So think about, you work with weights. Mm-hmm. Think about something that's twice as strong as you are.
That's pretty easy.
We can't even fathom 1,000 times stronger than you are. You have no idea how powerful that protein is to lock up copper. And when we're under chronic stress, that's exactly what happens. Well, people don't know that. So that when copper goes low, iron accumulates in the tissue. It's a biological fact. It doesn't show up in the blood, but it is in the tissue. It shows up in T2 MRIs. It doesn't show up in regular MRIs, only the T2 enhanced MRIs, and it goes from black and white to Kodachrome, and suddenly clinicians can see, oh my God, there's a lot of tissue. There's a lot of iron in this tissue. And so people don't know that, and what they also don't know is that when iron is accumulating in the tissue, it's causing oxidative stress, which burns up the magnesium in that tissue.
It's a snowball. Right?
It's a snowball. And so people keep slathering on magnesium, or they keep taking more and more magnesium, which helps them with their symptoms, the aches, pains, whatever it happens to be, the twitch in the eye or the flutter in the heart. But what they've got to really do is get to the root cause of the magnesium, the relentless magnesium burn rate, the MBR, and that's what the RCP is all about. So I think it's really important for people to understand that these three minerals are all connected, and it's not complicated to get them in balance with each other so that you can manage and harness the oxygen that we depend on. It's really very important.
Pretty simple yet profound. Do you want to take a few questions from the chat room?
Sure. Oh, I'd love it.
All right, let's see what we can do here. All right, so there's one question. If you guys can, type your questions in all caps so I don't miss them. Kelvin wants to know. Kelvin just says, like, Morley, let's cut to the chase here. What should I eat right now to build my immune system? Let's just, all this theoretical talk, what do I do?
Yeah. 10 years in a soundbite, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Beef liver.
Beef liver.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks. And I know some people are like, oh my God, I haven't had that since I was a kid. No, but grass-fed beef liver, there's twice as much copper as there is iron. There's a ton of retinol. Why is that retinol thing important? Because that's what loads copper into the protein so that it can actually do the work inside your body. Whole food vitamin C, not ascorbic acid, please. They are wildly different.
Hugely different, yeah.
Hugely different. The form that I particularly like is Innate Response. Marcus, Markus, puts out a really nice vitamin C. Well, those are, you've got to be very, very careful. But for vitamin C, you would find in lemons. Make lemon tea. Take slices of lemons and put them in hot water. That was actually a recommendation from a Chinese research scientist. He didn't live in Wuhan, but he said, you want to stop this virus in its tracks? At that time, he thought it was a virus.
Mm-hmm.
He said, take 3 lemons, put it in hot water, and drink that every day. And he was absolutely right about that, because it's a very rich source of copper. The third easiest source is locally grown or locally harvested bee pollen. It's a great source of copper, because you can't pollinate a flower and you can't pollinate an animal unless you have copper. It's absolutely essential. And so those are 3 very readily found sources of copper. We can start to get into oysters. That's another big step for people. Not everyone's ready for an oyster.
Mm-hmm.
Or some nuts, or really grains. Again, a lot of people have aversion to grains because of gluten, when in fact it was the glyphosate. But find clean sources of grains. And again, think about our ancestors. My goodness, they lived on bread and cheese. They didn't have full course meals every day. They worked very hard. They had a very simple diet, but it was wheat that was this high, not this faux wheat that we've been raised on. And so the sources of copper, another one is oats. Historically, oats, you've heard the expression, that horse is feeling its oats.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was a source of copper. Buckwheat, another great source of copper. But you've got to get it from farmers who understand that the copper's got to be in the soil in order to get into the plant.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it's all about.
Yeah,
so
obviously.
Those are 5 different options.
Yeah, so beef liver obviously is going to be best if it's sourced and eaten raw. You can get desiccated, which a lot of people kind of start with. If people are interested, we have those on Biocharge Me. It's the ancestral supplements. You can start there.
It's great company.
Yeah, but not obviously as good as the beef liver. Here's another question, Morley. This was coming from a little bit earlier. From Joe Mama on YouTube, and he says, can you please ask if there's anything, now this is going to set you off because he talks about zinc, but he says, can you please ask if there's anything to this zinc and quinine protocol? Have you heard about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much time do you have?
I don't know. It depends how many questions there are.
No, I one of the points that I wanted to make, and so Joe Mama, I appreciate the question because it allows me to dance on this issue. And I think, this doesn't set me off, but I think it's an opportunity to make sure people understand what's going on. I find it fascinating that all of the mainstream recommendations, and there are 5 of them, high dose ascorbic acid, high dose zinc, high dose vitamin D, hydroxychloroquine, and zithromycin, all 5 of them kill the bioavailability of copper. And let that sink in. And let's come back to Pasteur versus Béchamp. Pasteur was all about the particle. We got to kill the particle. And Béchamp was like, no, let's strengthen the field. Let's increase the vitality of the host. And what the entire focus of the CDC, the entire focus of the FDA, the entire focus of the AMA and every related body is we've got to kill this pathogen. And we're going to ignore the host. And so does that protocol work with hydroxychloroquine and zinc? Yes, it does. In the short term, it will kill the pathogen. In the long term, it is also going to weaken the host. Now, here's something that's important for people to understand. The one true pandemic on this planet right now, there's only one. It's called malaria. And there's 5,000 people who die every day of malaria and have been for probably the beginning of time. But it's a very significant clinical event. And people who have healthy levels and activity of ceruloplasmin, we've talked about that before, that's the protein that allows copper to work its magic. People with healthy levels and activity of ceruloplasmin do not get malaria. People who do not have healthy ceruloplasmin require hydroxychloroquine. Let that thing sink in. So what they're doing is they're using a drug that they know will work in the bodies of people that do not have healthy bioavailable copper. That's the message, folks.
Interesting. Yeah. That's so fascinating.
Because people don't know about copper, not in their consciousness, then they go down a completely different path. Missing information equals missing truth.
And fear, right?
And the missing truth will lead you to fear, which will lead you to medications or a vaccine, which are entirely toxic for our well-being. And again, people are always pushing my buttons. Yeah, but if I'm in a crisis situation, I need that zinc.
Right.
And at the end of the day, people got to do what they're going to do. My whole focus is to get people to the point where they can laugh at the pathogens because they've got this resilient immune system, this really smart immune system that knows how to slice and dice whatever you throw at me. I want your immune system to be like Bruce Lee. That's really what I want.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Just bring it on. I can handle it.
I love it. How important is true retinol, vitamin A, from animal foods in supporting and having copper be utilized and available?
I think it's instrumental. I think what we're witnessing, if adding iron to our food system is regarded by Jim Moon, who wrote the book Iron, the Most Toxic Metal, he regarded iron, the decision to add iron to our food system, as the greatest assault to human physiology. And I would say the depletion or the elimination of real retinol, it comes from fat. What does the word fat mean? From animal tissue. But the elimination of real retinol from our diet, I would say, is the second greatest assault to our human physiology. And because people don't understand what retinol does, because people don't know that when they go out in the sun, it isn't just synthesizing vitamin D, it's activating the breakdown of vitamin A into what are called retinoids. Like what are they, from Mars? No. Retinoids, it's a whole class of metabolites that includes nuclear receptors, RXRs, RARs, RORs, are really incredibly important. Oh, by the way, the vitamin D receptor doesn't work without RXR. So you can take all that vitamin D you want. You're not going to do anything until you've got retinol in your system. Oh, and the vitamin D supplements block the absorption of retinol. How about that? So then we've got the retinoic acids. What the what? The retinoic acids, which are hormones, all trans retinoic acid, 9-cis, 13-cis, 11-cis. These are really incredibly important hormones that have profound functions in the body. And there's zero consciousness about this. Why? Because we've all been dumbed down, absolutely dumbed down. And so people don't realize that the elimination of fat has had a devastating effect to our physiology. And I know that there are many people who are vegetarian or vegan who find it offensive. It's just in an era where there's very little copper in the soil, it can't convert the beta carotene into retinol, and it takes 12 units of beta carotene to become one unit of retinol. It's a big conversion, 12 to 1. And most people are taught, oh, they're equivalents, 1 to 1. No, it's 12 to 1. And I came across some very important research just this past week, which fascinated me because I'm a student of atherosclerosis, because it's how everybody in my family dies. So I figure I'm next. I'm doing my level best to avoid that. But the important thing is, this is an amazing study because they wanted to put beta carotene head to head with retinol.
Okay.
As it related to atherosclerosis. Justin, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. There was no atherosclerosis in the animals that were eating retinol. Beta carotene had no capacity to stop the progression of plaque.
Really?
Absolutely. And I would contend it's because there may have either been too little copper, or there was some component that prevented the beta carotene from becoming an active metabolite in the study. So that's a very important study. The other study that was equally as fascinating is we all focus on our microbiome, right? We're all worried about it. and as Dr. Shiva says in the video that I'll send you, he talks about it's a very important foundation for the immune system. Totally agree with that. But it really depends on what the fat is in your diet. And so what this particular study was doing was measuring the bad bugs, the bad bacteria in the microbiome, depending upon whether you were eating beta carotene or whether you were eating retinol. And when you were eating beta carotene, there's a lot of bad bacteria. It was a flat line for retinol. There was no bad bacteria because it's an energetic dynamic. The energy of retinol is completely different. The vibration, the capacity for change, the capacity for conversion is completely different when retinol is in our body. And so the pathogenic bacteria say, woo, I'm not going to be here for that. And they leave. They literally do. And in fact, what happens is you've got the E. coli, which are the bad guys, and you have lactobacillus, which are the good guys. Well, when you have retinol in your diet, lactobacillus is here and E. coli is here. You take retinol out of the diet, and it does the exact opposite. E. coli is up here, lactobacillus down here. And again, there have been many studies to this effect that have been either forgotten or somehow conveniently pushed aside so that people think they can have margarine or whatever and they'll be fine. And that's not true. That's definitely not true.
Interesting. All right, guys. I just kind of was scrolling through the chat, and I noticed some of you were saying that you couldn't hear Morley. So I hope that he's been a little bit low. So I turned him up a little bit. So I hope you can hear him now. Let me know if you can.
Uh-oh.
No, I just think you're a little bit low, but I think they could still hear you. So I apologize for that. Anthony wants to know where.
I'm passionate, but I'm low. Okay. I get it.
Anthony wants to know, I think he's a member of our academy, actually. Where can you get a good source of copper? So we'll kind of go through these questions a little bit quicker. Where can you get a good source of copper to put in your garden for food that you grow?
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of like what you just touched on a little bit, but with the beta carotene.
That's an amazing question. I would guess the best, and again, you're best off checking in with an ag center, a UC Davis or some really noted program. I would think it's going to be copper sulfate would probably be your best bet. I don't think copper chloride. I'm not sure. Copper gluconate might be an option.
Okay.
But that's a fascinating. There's a company called Blue Gold, and they have a Blue Gold, and they have a product that restores mineral dynamic, trying to get rid of the impact of GMO. And I know they have copper in their product. Blue Gold, I believe they're based in Montana, but I'm not certain of that.
I'll look them up.
Good company.
Yeah. Whiskey wants to know, what about using a copper-based vessel to drink your water in? Any good?
It comes up all the time. I think the challenge we've got is not knowing the pH of the water. Where that originates was in India, and in historical cultures, people have used it. This was all before sanitation of water, and it was a known copper in and of itself. And there are articles about this that came out during the initial stages of the COVID crisis. A lot of articles about how copper is anti-pathogenic. We know that, right? It's a well-known fact. But the key is getting the copper inside our body, not wearing it, not having it on doorknobs and door plates and things like that. We've got to get it inside our mitochondria. But the thing is, the copper is it's a very tricky thing to work with to get it inside our body, and I think what we have to be sensitive to is that it doesn't lend itself to supplements. Unfortunately, it's not something like there's a go-to copper supplement. It really doesn't work that well that way.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very, very careful when we're working with copper in that regard. That's why the root cause protocol has mechanisms to incorporate it and make it bioavailable.
Yeah, because it's a metal, right? I mean, it's not like something you can just supplement, and it's so complex too. Selare on YouTube, assuming that we're bringing in enough vitamin A in the diet, is copper from seeds and nuts okay, since the phytates block iron and enhance copper? So nuts and seeds, you think?
Again, everything hinges on to what extent were the farmers that were growing those foods that produce the nuts and seeds, were they properly mineralizing it? So, God willing, and the creek don't rise, and there's literally a little creek outside, which I hope doesn't rise. But in July, I'm going to be talking at the Family Farm Days up in Lancaster, PA, where the Amish and the Mennonite hang out. And I've been invited to give a talk about what we're talking about right now. And the farmer, the Amish farmer who organizes it, he was absolutely fascinated. What should have been like a 5-minute conversation just to confirm that we got into this discussion, very much like what we're having right now. And he said, "This is just amazing." He said, "People are going to love this talk." He said, and what I'm really grateful for is that many years ago, one of my mentors encouraged me to focus on copper. And he said, I go to great lengths to make sure I've got copper in my soil, and he's very proud of his produce. You got to find farmers like that really focus on the mineral composition of the soil, with a particular understanding that copper is really important. And again, everyone loves to talk about, well, there are 82 minerals, and Dr. Trent went right into it. Oh,
Right.
there's all these things you got to worry. No, let's bring it down. Let's make sure we got the magnesium and the bioavailable copper. Let's put a damp on the iron, and things are going to be fine. And I think that we don't need to explode into all of these other things, but you've got to find farmers who understand the importance of these priorities.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think in the natural health world, people get so focused on these really advanced protocols, or like, the minerals. There's, like you mentioned, there's all these different minerals and focusing on these, but there are certain minerals that affect the body more if they're depleted or if there's an excess. And the body needs these certain minerals to run a certain way. And so I think like we get it all into these really complex things. But really, if 42% of your 9,000 enzymes run on magnesium, I think we should focus there, right? And if iron is starving your 25 trillion red blood cells of oxygen, I think we should start there. And then maybe later on down the line, you can get into the more complex stuff. But if your cells are literally starved and can't operate properly because of the iron filings in our food since the early 40s, I mean, start there, right? It makes the most sense,
It does. And I came across, again, we've all had a lot of time to watch videos. I came across a really cool video by Dr. J. I'm not even sure what his last name is, so I apologize to him. I absolutely appreciate what he was saying about mitochondria, because he gave me the formula to get to the number of mitochondria in the human body. Now, we're just going to talk round numbers.
Okay.
So he claims that there's about 30 trillion cells. I've seen the number as high as 100 trillion. But let's stay with his numbers. And what he got us to was 40 quadrillion mitochondria. That's a big number, right?
Wow. 40 quadrillion.
Like 40 quadrillion mitochondria. And we can talk about the fact that the liver has between 1 and 2,000 mitochondria, the heart 5,000 mitochondria.
Brain.
For the brain, I'm not sure what the brain is, but the one that absolutely blows my mind is mature egg cells. The women in the audience are going to go nuts when they hear this.
Yeah.
It can be anywhere from 100,000 to 600,000 mitochondria in one egg. The average is about 300,000. So do you think possibly it might be the demand for copper to run those mitochondria that might be why they're having PMS? Has anyone ever thought about this before? So the thing is, we've got 40 quadrillion mitochondria, and they run on the energy of copper. They absolutely do. And the research of Prate and Ponsertz and a whole bunch of other people in 2014 doing a study of MS, they took copper out of the rodent, and the mitochondria, the mitochondria completely shut down. And then May's 2000, they wanted to see, gee, I wonder if copper has anything to do with complex 5. Totally shuts down. People know that that's a rotor. We've talked about it. Well, the bulb of the rotor has an alpha and a beta subunit. There's actually 3 alpha and 3 beta. Well, guess what, folks? The beta subunit is exactly where ADP gets its third phosphate to become ATP, and that subunit only works in the presence of copper. So the mitochondria are absolutely dependent on copper. 40 quadrillion, and inside the mitochondria is something called the matrix copper pool. The very innermost part is called the matrix, and it's supposed to be filled with copper atoms. You think that's the case worldwide? When they've been taking copper out of the soil, they've been refining copper out of the food, they've been giving us medication that chelates copper out of our body. And so I think we've got to get back to basics. I think, Justin, you're absolutely right. We don't need to focus on 82 minerals. We really need to focus on the 3 that have a profound relationship with each other, especially around oxygen. And if they're not in the right balance, there's going to be a production of oxidative stress. And that's what causes us to rust inside, just like we see iron rusting on the outside. And that's how basic it is. It's not. I know people are looking for complicated and they're looking for really sophisticated. Well, the body works in very simple ways when it is properly nourished with the right nutrients, which is what the root cause protocol profiles.
Mm-hmm. And this holds true with 5G coming, 6G. They're working on 6G now. With the coronavirus, with all this kind of stuff, this is like, you want to make sure your body's operating properly because these environmental factors are increasing. So this is why it's really important to make sure that we focus on things we can do. I can't get rid of 5G. You can't get rid of it. But what we can do is focus on our own immune system. Here's another question. This is kind of off topic a little bit, unless medicinal mushrooms contain copper or something. Chris wants to know, what are your thoughts on different varieties of medicinal mushroom supplements? I guess he's talking maybe in terms of immunity and things.
Well, the earth meat is a source of vitamin C, which means it's got copper in it. I think what's the one? I think the one we take right now is it turkey tail? Am I getting it right? Very, very good for the immune system.
Okay.
So all you've got to do is Google mushrooms and immune system, and they will pop up. But again, the key, and not a lot of people recognize this key, but the key is that bioavailable copper is what vitalizes the mitochondria. And what you'll learn from the video from VA Shiva is the immune system is it's a 6-cylinder engine. It's fascinating. There's 3 cylinders coming from the innate system. There's 2 cylinders coming from the acquired immune system. And then you've got interferon. Those are the 6 cylinders of the immune system. And guess what? They all require energy, which every one of them requires copper. And so I know people think sometimes they get too reductionistic, but I'm trying to simplify this, that why is everyone getting so sick? And when you find out that the pathogens feed on low energy tissue, when you find out that pathogens feed on high iron, when you find out that high iron causes energy loss, when you find out that, energy is made with bioavailable copper, when you find out from Jamie Collins at University of Florida in Gainesville, in 3 studies in the last 3 years, that when you have supplemental iron, you're going to kill your copper. The dots start to get connected, and you begin to simplify the process. And the people with high IQ love complexity. But folks, we're trying to make it simple. The other thing that for people with high IQ, when does stress begin for people with high IQ? When they feel out of control. And so that's, a lot of us are feeling out of control right now. We're into week 3 or 4 of this stay at home, which is the most absurd assault on our liberties. We don't need to talk about that.
That's a whole separate show, right?
Whole separate show.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, imagine how I felt when I was told I had to leave Starbucks. I felt out of control.
Right.
And I know exactly how everybody feels, because I was like, I had a pile of papers and I was like just getting into it. But the point is, that's when everything starts to change, is when we feel out of control, we then experience stress, and that stress, that knot in the stomach, turns into oxidative stress, because stress hormones come to the rescue. Why? Because the body knows you've got oxidative stress, and it knows those stress hormones can help to manage that oxygen molecule.
Here's a good one.
Very basic.
From Whiskey. And just so you guys know, all of these sort of questions about medicinal mushrooms, this one here is about colloidal silver. If you go into the root cause protocol, you'll learn more about Morley's thoughts about these things. But ultimately, it's like protecting the things that we're focusing on, which are iron, copper, true vitamin A, retinol, magnesium, and how these other substances affect those. So like in the case of, people say vitamin C, whole food vitamin C is what you want to go for, not the ascorbic acid, because what it does to the copper enzyme. And so in the same way, Whiskey asks here, Morley, about colloidal silver. And I think that according to the root cause protocol, it depends on the kind of silver. Is that correct?
Right. So you have colloidal and you have nano.
Okay.
And look on a periodic table, and you'll see that silver is below copper on the periodic table. And so silver it is an antibiotic. I'm not disputing that at all. I think it's a very powerful antibiotic, but its property, and it's in the literature, I've seen it 3 different times, that silver will bump copper out of the tissue by its properties. Now, somehow, I don't begin to understand the biochemistry of it. When they nano-sized it, it doesn't have those same properties. So nano silver is very okay. I don't push it, but I certainly don't oppose it. But colloidal silver is a different beast. And for people who want a deeper dive on that, Robert Scott Bell and I have talked about that on several occasions.
I'm sure you have.
It's a recognized quality of nano silver is that it will still work without disrupting the copper.
I know he's a big silver guy. Is the kind of silver that he recommends, is that a nano or is it a colloidal?
Absolutely. It's nano. Absolutely
nano. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't be brought back again and again if we were conflicting over the silver issue. I can tell you that.
Interesting. Yeah. So it's kind of similar to, like I said, the vitamin C, right? It depends on the form, obviously, right? I mean,
and the thing is, it's what the root cause protocol tries to do is really boil it down to its essence of what are some things stops, what are some things to stop doing. Stop taking zinc, stop taking iron, stop taking calcium, stop taking ascorbic acid, stop taking stop taking colloidal silver. And so we tried to boil it down and then make a series of recommendations about what to do. And all I can tell folks is that there are about 2,000 people a month that download that protocol.
That's awesome.
We give it away. It's just trying to help people. And we get testimonials all the time from people. I get calls and emails all the time from people thanking the protocol or thanking me, but it's really Mother Nature for saving their life. And it's just what we've done is we've allowed the individual to restore their body back to its original design. We were absolutely meant to have these nutrients in our body from our diet, but people didn't realize the decisions that were made over the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and so on had a material impact on our ability to access these nutrients. It's that basic.
Yeah, and people don't realize that in the same way people today are all up in arms about chemtrails and 5G and these types of things, this environmental assault doesn't just come in the form of like environmental toxins. It comes in the form of our food system and the iron fortification program that you mentioned too, 1941 and doubled, I think you said, in 1969 or something. These iron filings have been an assault to our health, and this is what we're dealing with now, bodies that are filled with iron. And so you guys listening, I highly recommend downloading this protocol and getting on it and starting it, because like I mentioned before, there's a lot of people talking in this natural health. There's so many different things. Like you can get on molecular hydrogen, you can do colloidal silver, coffee enemas, you can do all these fancy things, but you got to get your foundation correct, and you got to get the foundation of your health supportive of living a long, healthy, disease-free life. And so this is, I think, after 650 shows, this is the closest thing to it that I can see. Larry wants to know, how about adding boron to the soil? Is that good?
Yeah. Now, boron is an amazing, it's actually a crystal. The way I like to describe it is that boron has an amazing relationship with iron. And there's a famous article, Walter Last wrote a very important article about boron, and there's other studies that were done. There's an Australian many years ago who developed a solution to arthritis based on boron, because of its known properties to regulate and change the composition or the presence of iron in the tissue. And along comes a pharmaceutical firm says, "Wow, this is a great product. We'd love to buy it." And over time, they eventually did buy it. And guess what they did? They shut it down because
Wow.
it was eliminating sales of their painkillers. So I'm sure there are hundreds of stories like that. But the important thing is that boron, it's part of the protocol. It's specifically mentioned in our protocol because of its known properties to help the body to regulate iron, and that's very, very important. And it also has an amazing capacity to carry oxygen, which I find fascinating, and that's why they call it a crystal, because of its structure in that regard.
Another
Yeah,
question
it's a
here.
great component.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Another question here. Lots of good questions. I'm trying to find some of the better ones. If bread doesn't say enriched wheat flour, but it just says wheat flour, but you look on the label and it says 10 to 15% of iron daily value on the label per 2 slices, is it still enriched with iron?
Great question.
Man.
No, it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
I think by law they're required to say if they're adding iron. There's going to be iron in a lot of the foods that we eat, independent of what the food processors add to it.
Okay.
So if you're at all worried about that, make sure you're getting bread from artisan bakers, or if you're going to bake it yourself, get it from Bob's Red Mill or King Arthur. They're 2 very reliable sources, or there are others, but be very careful about the flour that you're using. But I think by law they'd have to indicate if they're adding iron, and so the fact that it has some small percentage of iron in its product, I don't think you should worry about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done a couple different shows, and Morley's got a ton of information about iron and how much we actually need to get back into the, what is it called, the reticuloendothelial system or whatever. Yeah, the recycling system.
The recycling system, yeah. Call it what it is. It's a recycling system. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you always say, they make these fancy terms to keep us all confused, right? I mean, it's just recycling. That's.
I'm embarrassed to tell you how long it took me to figure that one out. Reticular endothelial is actually recycling.
Yeah, it's so simple. Chris wants to know, is it okay to take a CoQ10 supplement to help with cellular energy of the mitochondria? Thank you. The show is great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
This is an adrenal cocktail. So for those who are wondering, CoQ10 is amazing. It's also called ubiquinone.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it called ubiquinone or ubiquinol? Because it's ubiquitous. Again, 40 quadrillion mitochondria. They're all going to have CoQ10. It's an electron carrier, and well, they don't like to talk about it, and I won't say that I have definitive research. My intuition tells me that there's got to be a relationship with copper. With anytime you're involved with electricity, copper's not far behind. And so the addition of the CoQ10, I think, is fine. Again, these supplements are like cars. You get what you pay for. I've always been fascinated at clients that go to AutoZone and buy the most expensive car oil they can for their car, and then they drive down to Walmart to buy their supplements and put whatever they can find. And it's like, no, buy synthetic oil for your car, put the money in your supplements, and really do the research, make sure you're getting the right product, and really a well-engineered product. PQQ might be something to consider as well, because that increases the number of just the saturation that you're going to get. So yeah, I think that is fine. And for people who've taken statins, what was it doing? It was killing CoQ10. Mm-hmm. Well, that's when I began to suspect that there was a copper connection, because anytime they're trying to weaken us, they're going to go after the minerals, magnesium and copper, that enable us to make energy. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, if you don't have ubiquinone, you can't move the electrons, and then you can't complete the energy cycle and make ATP.
I mean, that's really what this is about, right? This whole root cause protocol is freeing up the things that are depleting the body's ability to create ATP. I mean, that's essentially what it is, right?
That's really what it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when you have energy, you have vitality. When you have vitality, you have frequency. And Jerry Tenner will tell you when the cells are vibrating right, pathogens can't exist in that environment.
And you have a strong immune system, right? I mean, that's what it's all really about, right?
Absolutely. The immune system is energy. It really is.
Cool stuff. Got a lot of people. Okay, so Kaya wants to know where can she download. It's a free protocol. She wants to know where can I download it. It's rcp123.org, right? Root cause protocol, rcp123.org, right?
Scroll to the bottom of the page and then give us your email address and we'll give you the protocol for free.
Yeah, guys, do that. Make sure. This is like the number one thing you can do. I can tell you, I see so many people doing all these fancy things and they still have health problems. And I'm telling you guys, this is the foundation that you can get on. Got a lot of people, gosh, from all over the world. Hello from South Africa. That's so cool. That's amazing.
Very exciting.
So Sanrico wants to know, is chlorophyll good to take?
Yeah, chlorophyll it's an amazing substance. And chlorophyll and hemoglobin, the structure is identical with one exception. Hemoglobin has iron in the center and chlorophyll has magnesium in the center. We regularly recommend people take, there's a particular form that we like. It's by Bernard Jensen. He was a naturopath and his company has like 300 acres of fields in Spain where they grow alfalfa.
Okay.
And they harvest this amazing product, and it's got chlorophyll. It also has chlorophyllin. People have always wondered, what is chlorophyllin? Well, that has copper in the center of that same molecule. And it's really good, a real good tonic for building up the blood. And so, especially people who think they're anemic, when in fact their iron's just stuck in their cells, it's a great way to open up the system and begin to introduce the building parts that they need in order to get their blood back into balance.
Cool. Malcolm says, what do you think of the product? Are you familiar with that product called ASEA, ASEA at all? What do you think of that? Is that any good? I've heard a lot about it, but I don't know much. I don't know really what it is.
Dr. Liz and I tried it off and on for about 6 months. She's also she's master Reiki, master muscle tester. We never really got good vibes from it. I've got clients though. I want to say that I've got clients that swear by it. I don't incorporate it into the protocol. I'm pretty reticent about network marketing, just because I don't want people to think that if I'm pushing it, oh wait, I can't wait to make a lot of money. That's not what this is about. And so I would just encourage people to keep an open mind.
Okay.
And we just have not gotten the juice from that squeeze, but I do have clients that feel very strongly about what it's done for them or their children. And so I would encourage people to keep an open mind.
Okay. Dr. Ace Harden on YouTube says, what does Morley think of Shilajit?
Morley doesn't know what that is, so I apologize.
Shilajit is like a compressed mineral-based whole food substance coming from, like, usually it's in like a gel or some sort of like really thick, almost like a Vegemite kind of a thing, like really thick, like a honey, but it's a compressed mineral source from different layers of the Earth's crust and things like that from generations past. And it comes typically from India or Russia, things like that, places like that.
Well, I'm flat-footed. I'm not familiar with it. I'm really draw minerals from the sea, and of course from Utah has a lot of minerals in their seabed, like the Great Salt Lake. I am not familiar with that. I will look into it though, because that sounds like a fascinating product. I know that in Australia they talk about Vegemite, and people down under are very critical of it. They don't use it. They don't take it seriously. I just don't know what we're talking about here in terms of coming from Russia or coming from India. Again, these are ancient cultures where there's a lot of wisdom, and I just don't. What the only caution I would have is, I worry about human hands getting in between Mother Nature and a final product. I just don't know. I don't know what the manufacturing process is, but I really appreciate the suggestion. I will look into it because it sounds like a fascinating source.
Yeah, our mutual friend, Mr. Matt Blackburn, has a Shilajit product, and
He does. You're absolutely right. He does.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's a good product.
I just don't know enough about it, and I don't know whether it has a particular bias. Is it got a particular concentration of one nutrient or one mineral over another?
No,
I
it
just
sounds
don't
to me
know
like
that.
it's an organic sort of extraction, I guess would be the way to take it. Is it's just whatever minerals are in the soil at that time during that sort of era of the earth. It's really an interesting thing to look into as far as the overall mineral-based supplement, like kind of like how you mentioned the Utah Sea minerals, and it's kind of like a full spectrum kind of deal. So.
Old dog, new trick. I can't wait to learn more about it. So that's great.
A couple more questions here because I know you're busy. Rock dust. What do you think about adding that to the soil from Sarah on YouTube for your
absolute essential? Again, this goes all the way back to Sir Howard. Is it Sir Albert Howard? I think. I mean, again, he was talking about rock dust decades ago. I think that's what most European farmers use, and the tragedy is it's not done here in the States. I'm not sure what its use is worldwide, but I know Europe is very particularly fond of rock dust, and it's a great way to restore the minerals. Again, cool. the tragedy is that the soil over time becomes dirt. When you start to add the minerals back, it becomes soil that can then support the microbes, and that's when the real action begins for growing plants again. Because you got to get those minerals into the root system. Well, that's what the microbes are good at. It doesn't just get in there. It's like the microbes are doing the work.
Yeah.
So you've got to have the minerals to support the microbes to allow the process of life to move forward.
In relationship to that, Cell says, if soils are depleted, how do we know whole food supplements have the nutrients they say they do?
I think that's a fabulous question.
Yeah.
I regularly ask farmers, walk me through how you feed your soil. And the farmers that are really committed to that, they'll talk your ear off. The farmers that don't, they'll start talking about the weather. So you've got to be very careful. And I understand we don't have complete control over all the farmers that feed us. But what you want to be doing is putting a lot of emphasis on the local farmers markets, getting to know those farmers, building up a working relationship, even asking if you can visit their farm. Many of them will allow you to do that. You can even volunteer if you want. But I think it's important to get back to a real visceral understanding of what are they doing to create the soil to grow my food. And we don't have time to get into it now, but it's the exact same question that women who are pregnant should be asking themselves, what am I doing to build the soil to grow this baby? And we can have an entire show on that alone, because a lot of the modern farming practices are influencing the modern obstetrical practices, and that's not exactly progress. So we could talk about that at a future point.
So a lot of other cool questions. The Shilajit is a fulvic humic complex that makes it more bioavailable because its body recognizes it as food. A lot of other questions here. What does Morley think about drinking water from copper? We kind of mentioned that, Dee, a little bit ago. I was wondering, what Bernard Jensen died of.
I don't know what he died of. That's an intriguing thought.
Yeah.
Old age, I hope.
I hope, right?
I hope
That's the idea, right?
Way.
You want to die very old, right? But young as well, right? You want to have a nice long life and die quickly at the end. I think that's the goal, right?
and be as young in your heart and your mind as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Morley, I think we covered just about all the questions. I'm not going to go over we're on 2 different Facebook pages, but I think we've done an hour, 40 minutes, and I want to be cognizant of your time. So I hope we covered.
Come on, man, we're just getting started, right?
Do you want to go further? We can go further.
I'll give it a couple more minutes. Yeah. If people have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm sensitive to your time as well, so don't overstay. But
Okay,
yeah,
cool. Well, yeah, I mean, this is kind of a unique and rare opportunity, guys. If you're happen to be listening live, come over to the YouTube channel so you can ask questions, because I'm not really monitoring the Facebook pages. It's just too many questions, in different places, so it's kind of challenging in that way. Let's see. There was a couple questions I skipped over. Let's see. Dr. Ace Harden says, but even with the farmers and anything coming from organic farms, wouldn't the wind blow chemicals from these chemtrails and still land on the soil? That gets into like,
no question.
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of this, stuff in the air too, right?
At some level, there's only so much we can control.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to have faith that we're going to do the best we can and move on. I mean, we could get into emotional lockdown, worrying about all the possible variants. That we just have to, at some level, put our trust in the farmers that we do know about, the sources of food that we are comfortable with, the practices that we're doing, the additional detoxing things like you were talking about with the saunas and the bouncers and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
doing the exercise routines. And then at some point we just have to surrender to, I'm doing everything I can, and just allow the process of life to continue.
It's interesting, isn't it, Morley, with this sort of assault on our environment? And by environment, I mean like internal environment and external environment. With the food systems, the iron fortification program, you have all these sort of NPK fertilizers and all these chemtrails. Like, as we continue to move forward, it's like it kind of becomes, sometimes I get a little frustrated that like I shouldn't have to do a sauna 5 days a week. I sometimes I don't want to do it. I shouldn't have to do all these things. Like, it gets me so, why can't I just live off the land? But I guess our culture is so just not natural that we just kind of have to do these things as we get more toxic, right? It's crazy.
Well, the way I describe it, it's a very important point. I believe in reincarnation,
Mm-hmm.
and many people do. Not everybody, but many people do. And life makes more sense when you do believe in reincarnation, and you realize that you chose to be here for a series of experiences. And the other real shift for me was when I began to accept the fact that I chose my parents. That's a very interesting concept.
That's
And
wild.
that they were my there a lot of heartache there, but there was also a lot of wisdom. And when you begin to look at it that way, life is very different, and you have a lot more grace. You can be more forgiving. But absolutely, when you think about the fact that I'm here to learn things, here for a reason, to have an
Mhm.
experience, then you are more accepting maybe of these inconveniences, and we all experience them daily, and it is frustrating, but it's all of this stuff is not being done to us; it's being done for us, so that we can reach a different level of consciousness, a different level of understanding and awareness, and then that's when the real growth takes place. Is when, in the midst of all of that, we are allowed to be who we want to be,
Mhm.
and move forward with that. So it is a process of acceptance, but I think there's a real deeper wisdom behind it.
Yeah, and fully express who we're meant to be, right? I mean, this idea
Right.
that we have to have enough self-worth and enough personal growth intention and enough desire to love ourselves, to take care of ourselves, that in and of itself is something is a lesson that maybe we chose to be here and to develop and cultivate that self-love so that we take care of ourselves. Because I see a lot of people walking around, and to me, the people that are the most fearful and the most afraid are the people that don't care or don't take care of themselves. And the reason why they don't take care of themselves is probably because they don't love themselves. They don't see self-care as a principle in their life. And those people that don't take care of themselves are the most fearful. And those people that watch the mainstream news are the most fearful as well. And so, like you and I discussed before we started, like, you and I are thriving. I have zero fear of this coronavirus.
Absolutely.
None
Absolutely.
at all. And I'm not even to where I would want to be on the root cause protocol, but still, because we know what we know, we're thriving, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Liz and I go out for regular walks, and it's absolutely comical to see what people will do to try to get away from us because they're so afraid they're going to get. I mean, they're amazing walking trails in North Carolina,
I bet, yeah.
but but the behavior is completely different today than it was 3 months ago, or even 2 months ago.
Wow.
And it's absolutely comical to see people jogging, and they see us, and they'll just go off into the woods to stay. I'm like, wow,
It's like-
they're that afraid. It's amazing. And then you think about the people with the masks and the gloves, and then you find out that mycoplasmas, they're not stopped by masks and gloves. It's like that's going to freak people out when they find out about that.
It's crazy.
So I think we live in a very different world now, and I think what I'm most concerned about is the speed with which society adopted social distancing,
Mm-hmm.
and the speed with which people are going to resist being able to shake hands and hug and embrace and be near each other. And humans are very gregarious people. I actually think it's V.A. Shiva again who talks about our bodies communicate through our immune system. It's absolutely amazing how the immune system is running our show, and there's got to be a certain physical proximity in order to do that. And so I think whoever was behind the term social distancing was very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to take a long time. And when Dr. Liz and I were talking about it recently, we were thinking about what was it like back in 1918, 1919, 1920, after that massive loss of life. I'm sure people were very cautious, but then we came into the Roaring '20s, and life changed very dramatically. So, I think we will get out of this doldrums, but this has altered our reality in a way that I don't think anyone thought was possible, especially under such precipitous times. I mean, the speed with which it happened is absolutely mind-numbing.
I know,
Absolutely
right?
mind-numbing.
Just like picked up so quick. All right, let's do a couple more
Yeah.
questions. And Larry wants to know, I don't know why, he wants to know about using boron and DMSO topically. I don't know. Is that something? What
Well,
would that be for?
again, what we're trying to detoxify at the end of the day. And so there's a really savvy copper expert. His name is Lauren Pickart, Pickart. He's up in Seattle, Washington. He has a company called ReverseSkinAging.com, and he has copper products. He wanted to develop a copper supplement, and the Food and Drug Administration refused to allow him to do that. So he said, "What about skin cream?" And they said, "Oh, sure, you can do that."
Oh,
Well, he's a
really?
smart guy. He knows that the copper goes through the skin.
Interesting.
And in several of his products, he has products that have DMSO, and there's some dynamic between copper and DMSO that enhances the absorption. And I'm not aware of that boron would be mixed together with DMSO. I suppose it would enhance its bioavailability and maybe its absorption.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of doing it on the skin is that a lot of people do have skin issues, eczema, psoriasis, hives, whatever, and they may not be aware that the real issue is back in their liver. And when the liver, which is the largest organ inside the body, can't clear something, it sends it to the skin, which is the largest organ on the outside of the body, just to get your attention. So a lot of those problems that people have with their skin are usually inflammatory of nature. And what people need to understand is that inflammation is not a disease. It's the second stage of oxidative stress. So we have oxidative stress, and we have inflammation, and then we have the third level is called cytotoxicity, which is the beginning stages of cancer. So inflammation is nothing insignificant, but what it tells us is that there's a notable production of hydrogen peroxide, and that the mitochondria can't complete the energy cycle. And instead of turning it into water, they're turning it into hydrogen peroxide, and that's causing the skin issues in many cases. But apparently this boron mixed with DMSO must enhance its action, but also its absorption as well.
That's interesting. Here's one on copper. So we're kind of like jumping around a little bit, as everybody probably knows. The intention of this was to talk about the immune system and not necessarily focus on COVID-19 or whatever, but talk about copper and building the immune system. So since we're jumping around a little bit, is early hair graying in your 20s a new thing? Is copper deficiency the worst now than it has ever been? I think we kind of covered that, right?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people are not aware of is that there's been a notable emphasis placed on vitamin D at the expense of vitamin A. Historically, A and D are found together, going back way back in time, in foods, certainly in fish products, and even in like liver. There is vitamin D there, but it's more vitamin A. And the thing is that there's been a wholesale belief that vitamin D is just this amazing substance. Well, it's powerful, but it's not the storage form, it's the active form. And what most people don't know, I follow the work of Jim Stevenson Jr. on Facebook. He has a group called the SECO Steroid Hormone D group. Guy's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's a research scientist, has hundreds and hundreds of articles explaining why you would never want to take vitamin D as a supplement. But I think it's important for listeners to know that when you take storage D as a supplement, it can express itself 11 different ways inside the body. One of them is active vitamin D. It isn't, it comes in as storage and it comes out as active. It doesn't work that way. And so there's a lot of variables that people need to know about. And the emphasis on vitamin D has caused a lot of renal potassium wasting. And that's some very important research done by Dr. Ferris, who is a professor at Yale, 1962, John Ferris. And that's the title of the study, Vitamin D Causes Renal Potassium Wasting. What it also does, there's a study from 1999 by Zagar, Z-A-G-A-R, and what he was looking at was the increased absorption of iron and the increased oxidative stress of iron in the kidneys because of vitamin D. And I think what we're witnessing is a very significant uptick in hydrogen peroxide, in inflammation, in society. Everyone has some kind of inflammatory disorder. And it has affected the hair follicle. Now, if you follow traditional Chinese medicine, they'll tell you that the health of the kidney it isn't just the health of the ear, it's also the health of the hair. And early graying, particularly people who will go white at a very young age, clearly there is a lot of oxidative stress. The hair follicle has become under siege because of the supplements that we're taking, but also the food that we're eating. I think what's striking is look at movies from the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. And the morphology of the actors is completely different than it is today. The intensity, the thickness of their hair is completely different. And they had a very different diet back then than we have today, some 60 to 80 years later. So I think there clearly has been a wholesale change in the foundation of what it takes to have healthy hair. And the individual that I know is one of Dr. Liz's clients up in Chicago. She had the most beautiful hair of anyone I've ever seen. And I asked her, she was originally from Poland. And I asked her, I said, I'm curious, what do you do for your hair? And she got beet red. And she said, you promise you won't tell anyone? I said, oh, yeah. I've only said this story about 1,000 times. She said, my grandmother taught me to use lard, and she washed her hair in lard.
Interesting.
And it was, just a couple months ago, this was before I got kicked out of Starbucks. There's this young woman with a little boy, and she had this beautiful shock of hair. And I finally got the courage up to ask her. I walked up to her, I handed her my card. I said, "Forgive me, I love your hair. What do you do for it?"
Uh-huh.
She's from Russia,
Ah,
and guess what? She uses lard.
really?
So I know people are going to say, "Oh my God, I've got to use lard? Are you kidding me?" Well, maybe a safe alternative would be castor oil. You might feel a little more comfortable with that. But the shampoos that we're using, no, I wouldn't go there. And so I think that our hair is expressing the significant change that's taken place in our diet. And I'm sure people are wondering, well, gosh, if this guy knows what he's talking about, why doesn't he have a big shock of hair? Well, my hair used to be pretty vibrant until I moved to Louisiana. And the 7 years down there's a lot of iron down there. And I began my hair changed, it got thinner, and I've not been able to bring it back since then. So, I guess, that's the one. The joke I tell people is that I'm pretty confident I can cure cancer. I can't seem to fix my hair. So
Yeah, I remember you mentioned at one point your water was filled with iron when you were down there too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a very, very different world down there. And it's like beautiful. It's, great food, great environment, but you pay a price. You pay a price. And so that's one of the downsides.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up Morley's website here, rcp123.org, for you guys to take a look at so that you can know where to scroll. So here we are now. So Morley, tell everyone about the we've kind of, touched on it, but people can go to the bottom of this site, right, and download the protocol down here at the bottom.
Yep. Download the free instruction manual. When you click on that, it's going to ask for your email address.
Okay.
And then once you fill that in, you can do the download.
Cool.
And it's 32 pages, folks. This is not like, 2 pages and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
We really have tried to provide a lot of information. There are vendors who provide kits if you want it easy, but we make very specific recommendations about what components you want to focus on, what things you want to stop doing. And we've tried to simplify it. We're always open to suggestions on how to make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been about 4 years in the making to develop this and refine it. And, it's having a really significant impact in a lot of people's lives. This is cuts against the grain of a lot of other protocols, but it's because we are really, as Justin pointed out, we're really focused on increasing the body's ability to make energy. When you understand how energy is made inside the mitochondria, you got to have magnesium and bioavailable copper to do it. And you can't have too much iron. Well, then things begin to change in terms of what you think is important and where the priorities really need to be.
Mm-hmm. Amazing stuff. Morley, thanks so much for being on. And I know that you and I have been going back and forth. We've had to cancel a number of times. So I appreciate your time. And
this has been phenomenal. I really very much appreciate I've been going squirrely like everybody else. It's just fun to have this conversation and have a chance to catch up and hopefully answer questions for people. And we'll do it again, hopefully not in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'd love to sort of tackle a number of different health challenges from a mineral-based perspective, because it's funny that, a lot of people will talk about natural solutions for, health challenges, cancer, heart disease, all these things, but no one's really talking about minerals, and minerals run the hormones and hormones run the body. And so I'd love to talk more about these different protocols for people.
Great.
Yeah.
I really look forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Morley. What are you going to do rest of today? Anything fun?
We're going to go for a nice walk, maybe get a takeout from a local restaurant. That might be in the making. And it's supposed to be a beautiful day here tomorrow, just like it is today.
Nice.
Sunday, not so much.
Okay. Well, just
What
make
about
sure
you?
I'm gonna make sure I social distance. I'm gonna make sure I keep away from everybody I know. I'm gonna make sure to stay inside and not get any sunlight. I think that'd be a good idea
Exactly.
for my health,
I don't think that's going to happen. You're probably going to develop a mobile rebounder, right?
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to get outside. We take our kids for walks in the trails and stuff and get outside and trying
You
to
don't hold hands, I hope. You don't hold hands, right?
It's funny that you said that people on the trail do this to us too. They get out of our way and they
I know.
it's nuts.
The other day we were doing, and some guy, he made it. I was tempted. I was going to start to run after him. Just say, "What's wrong?"
Oh my God.
Oh.
Well, this is the
Gotta
world
have a
we live
sense
in.
of humor.
I know, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, Morley, thank you
Well,
again for your
thank you
time.
again.
Yeah, I really appreciate just your expertise and your the way you synthesize information and make it available and digestible. So thank you for all your study and your hard work and doing all the things you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Well, and thanks for schooling me up on Syllogy. I'm absolutely flat-footed on that, so I apologize for not knowing it, and I will next time we talk. I'm going to be on it and be able to speak eloquently about it.
Yeah. Talk to Matt about it. He knows all about it.
I will.
So,
yeah. I will. Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
That's great.
All right, Morley.
Okay.
Thank you again. Have a great day with your wife, and I'll talk to you
You as
soon.
well.
Okay.
Okay. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye. All right, guys, that was Morley Robbins. I hope you enjoyed the show. Normally, we would do a little commercial now. We've been going for 2 hours. Whoops, take his website off. We've normally been going for about 2 hours, or we have been going for about 2 hours. But while we're here, I would like to get your thoughts on this coronavirus, because we didn't get into... There's so many different angles to this virus, and we talked mostly in this interview, as you know, about the immune system, copper, magnesium, iron, true vitamin A, retinol. What I want to know is all the stuff we didn't get into. I'm just curious your thoughts while we have this sort of live chat going. I'm going to be monitoring on YouTube. I want to know, do you guys think there's an actual virus? Do you think that this thing is something that's made and accidentally got leaked? I can't tell you how much information I've watched on this subject. I didn't really want to get into all that kind of stuff today because Morley and I were talking before the show. There's so many different angles. There's so many different talking heads. But do you think there's an actual virus here? Do you think it was used by people like Bill Gates to be released on the public to introduce forced vaccinations? I'm really curious your thoughts. This kind of gets into the whole conspiratorial side, but I'm going to hang out for just a couple of minutes, and I want to get your thoughts if you guys are watching on YouTube and your chat. Very, very fascinating. I can tell you, for me, I have 0.000% fear of this coronavirus. I do not fear it at all in the least. I don't change my daily habits at all. I don't wear a face mask. I'm not going to do any of that stuff because I don't think that if anything, it's a cold. And honestly, I think that if this is a virus that was sort of artificially created in a lab, and there's stories about how it got shipped over to China from Harvard, all these kind of stories you hear. What doesn't make sense to me is if it doesn't seem like if this is all like a Bill Gates kind of conspiracy where he would have released this virus on the American population, on the world population, it seems like they would have done a much better job killing off more people. But there's all these angles too, like the testing. 80% testing is false positives. Now there's a whole thing. Like, look at this. I'll show you guys real quick while I have this up on the screen. This is from the CDC itself. Commercials, desktop. This is a cdc.gov website, and this is how to the new ICD code introduced for Corona-19 deaths. This is teaching doctors, the National Vital Statistics Systems from cdc.gov. This is teaching doctors how to put COVID-19 on the death certificates of patients who are, showing symptoms of COVID-19, even though they die of cancer, even though they die of heart attacks, or even though they die in a car crash. They're looking for these antibodies in their body, and if they're showing positive for them, then they're putting COVID-19 on the death certificates. And so, all of this stuff is, to me, super suspect, right? And I'm just curious, what do you guys think? I'm curious what you have to watch from the beginning. You think it's 5G related, Beck? Trying to depopulate. Yeah, Morley mentioned that. A lot of people have mentioned that. Guidestones, Georgia Guidestones. Yeah, I've looked into those already. Dr. Ace Harden, how they talk about reducing the population of the earth down to 500 million. Why would Bill Gates do this? What is the motive? Well, Bill Gates owns 15% of the WHO, and he's got, I think he's spending $20 billion on vaccines. So you got to think that if Bill Gates is going to be spending this amount of money on vaccines, he wants to make tenfold in return, right? So if he wants to make tenfold in return, you got to know that he's going to be on every interview talking about how we need to be mass populated, or mass, the mass population should be vaccinated. So you know he's really going to try to sell hard here. And yeah, the X-22 report, Spaceman, I watch their daily updates every day. I'm very familiar with that YouTube channel. It's a great channel. That gets into the QAnon type stuff, which is a whole separate thing. But it just seems to me that if this really was a pandemic, many people think it was a test. It's going to roll out a second phase of this thing. Maybe it's for population control. The head of the WHO came out and said the other day that they're going to want to start going into homes and sort of force isolate members of your own family. What are you experiencing in your area? I'm curious. Test kits are now contaminated with the virus Bill Gates owned. See, it's so funny because as soon as I mention on here about conspiracy theories and and all this kind of stuff, the chat's going crazy, which is cool. Financial control is a big one. Yeah, I think that's a big thing too. They want to go house to house with test kits. I've heard that as well. Financial reset, and many people know that our financial system is artificially propped up. And apparently Donald Trump has moved the Federal Reserve, which is a massive, massive control of our entire population and the whole world is controlled by the Federal Reserve, where we don't even create our own money. Now he's brought that in privately to the Treasury of the United States. So that's a huge thing that people are talking about. False flag, economic reset, 5G, forced vaccinations. All of these things make sense to me. It's really fascinating, isn't it? Christina, I think Dr. Shiva knows the truth. Yeah, we talked about Dr. Shiva on the show, and Morley mentioned that he didn't even talk about copper or magnesium at all. So Dr. Shiva has part of the thing. Even with Morley Robbins, he's got part of the... all of us only have a small part of what's actually going on. Dr. Ace Harden says a cashless society. Yeah, NESARA. What about NESARA? So NESARA is this act that was passed, NESARA, and I forget what the other one was called, in October of 2000, which is a whole thing about finances and how we're going to go back to the gold standard, which we've started to a little bit. We're going to be instituting a lot more, I guess. If you have to look into NESARA, check that out. October of 2000 is when it was put out. But there's a lot of interesting things in there about the changes coming to our society based on this NESARA that was actually passed. Christina Fitzgerald, Dr. John Bergman posted a video on Facebook. Actually, Christina, all of those videos, I don't know if you know, but we work with Dr. Bergman inside our Extreme Health Academy. And those videos he posted on Facebook, I believe are going to be coming down because of the censorship. So all of those are available inside the Academy now. Colloidal silver, we mentioned that. I think they're just saying how much they can get away with, just like a test. I think too. Yeah. X-22, he's totally lost. Don't trust the plan. The plan that Trudeau is talking about is the QAnon people that are looking into the Q movement. Yeah, see, Trudeau, I don't know how you know that. I mean, I don't know how this X-22 guy thinks he knows anything either, because unless these people are coming from the government themselves, we all have an opinion. The Q movement is an opinion. I don't know if it's true. X22, he follows the Q movement. I don't know if it's true. So total control, and it's about who wants it bad enough. Beck says, Justin, thanks for all the cool things you're adding to the Academy. Thank you, Beck. I appreciate that. You know what? And I've been doing so much research on this coronavirus, and to tell you the truth, I'm pretty sick of hearing about it every single day. And what sort of gets me upset is that people are so afraid of catching this coronavirus. And so I've going through and doing all this research on like 17 different things that you've probably never heard about when it comes to coronavirus, and actual studies of substances and things that kill this virus. And I'm not going to go into them here, but I'm going to be putting them into the Extreme Health Academy. I'm going to be doing a full video on the studies and the products and the substances, where you can get them, and all that cool stuff inside the Academy. And some cool things I pretty much guarantee you probably never heard of before. I'll just give you a little hint. Methylene blue, maybe something you never heard before, but all kinds of cool stuff. So when it comes to this mass control and mass pandemic and mass hysteria that's going on right now, people are fearful. And it says in the Bible that my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And I couldn't agree more with that, because people are dying, if people are really dying of this thing, but people die because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of truth. And people get really afraid when they don't understand something, and they feel out of control. And when people, like I mentioned in the show, the people that are the most fearful are the people that don't take care of themselves, and the people that watch mainstream news. And if you watch mainstream news, you're going to be fearful no matter what you do. So avoid watching anything mainstream. You're not going to get the truth. So the other thing is to make sure that you take care of yourself, and you fortify yourself with knowledge and understanding, because this is what's being purposefully deleted from the internet, or ways that you can prevent and overcome this virus, if it is a virus at all. So some people, there's Dr. Tim O'Shea, came out a couple of days ago, offering a $5,000 reward for anyone that can prove to him that there's a virus. David Icke said the same thing. I've heard so many people talk about, there's not even Adam Bergstrom. So many people I've heard say that this thing is not even a virus. They can't even prove it. They're testing for exosomes as symptoms and proteins in the blood. So this whole thing is a paper tiger, in my opinion. So arm yourself with knowledge and understanding. Start taking care of yourself. Turn off the news, and you're going to be just fine. I love this. Jason says, my roommate is scared to death, yet smokes e-cigarettes every day. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. You see all these people, and like my Kate's parents are scared to death. Kate told me that her dad has to cut her mom off after 2 hours of mainstream news every night, because she watches 2 hours, and then she gives us advice about how we should keep the kids away from all these things. And I literally I can't deal with that at all, because it's like, you don't understand how bodies work. You don't understand how viruses work. You've never looked into anything. So it's a sad state of affairs that we live in today. People are completely controlled. Yeah. Love you guys so much. I think I'm going to end it there. You guys are just so cool. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you again for being here and supporting the work. Thank you again for all that you do with us and for us, and sharing our shows and all of that stuff. I really appreciate you guys a lot. So thanks again for sharing our shows. Let me just kind of scroll through the mental health of our people and children. Temple Health says, great decade coming. That's awesome. Yeah, guys, look into all the opportunities. Look into all the great things that are going to happen as a result of this. This is going to be a great time, and this is a really critical time in our life and in the history of mankind. And like Dr. A says, turn the TV off and prepare yourself mentally and physically and spiritually. Couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Ace. Turn off that TV, guys. Stop watching that stuff. Listen to podcasts like this. There's tons of videos. There's tons of other podcasts. Arm yourself with information that's going to help you, that's going to give you immune system strength, and stop listening to the mainstream news. Stop listening to all of that fear stuff. It's going to get you nowhere. Fortify your immune system. Reduce your iron, donate blood on a regular basis, increase your amount of bioavailable copper, increase vitamin A, start doing saunas like I mentioned in this show. Start doing, a lot of the things that can boost your immune system, getting regular sun, blocking blue light, mitigating 5G, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, getting your minerals, all of these things, being happy, hugging those in your life, start taking care of yourself, and you don't have anything to fear. I think this is a paper tiger. All right, love you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you again so much. You are amazing. Follow us on Instagram if you would like. That would be great. I would love to have you joining us on Instagram. Thank you again for supporting us in our store. If you buy through Amazon, click through our Amazon link on our homepage. Think of us before you make a purchase there and supporting our work. And thank you for supporting us on biocharge.me with the products that we talk about, as well as the Extreme Health Academy. There's links on the YouTube channel below for that. All right, guys. Love you all. And I'll see you next week.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse